People say that there is no way a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its body off the ground. But this isn't true, really. In fact, a bee flaps its wings about 230 times per second and creates mini hurricanes wherever it goes. They buzz around forests, parks, gardens, interrupting our picnics with a very important job. They pollinate our crops.
So I've got quite a few hives dotted around the city. Most of my hives are on rooftops. The reason for that is in London, space is a premium. There's not a lot of space to put hives at ground level.
Yeah, I already had quite a lot of animals at my home, so I had geese and ducks and chickens, and bees seemed like a natural progression really to add to the menagerie.
And then I got this thing that is known generally in beekeeping as bee fever. And you either get it or you don't, okay? And when you get bee fever, you are absolutely hooked on the biology of this wonderful social insect.
In fact, it's a great hobby for anybody. And if you get honey, that's a huge bonus. But it's not the be-all and end, no pun intended.
It looks like it's black and yellow. And it looks like, but it's not sparkly.
It's rewarding to do this pollination service because you know that your bees are pollinating plants, and farmers, for example, are getting a higher yield from their crops. Nature is richer for it. More seeds are set on trees and shrubs.
And when they find a really, really good bit of forage, say 2 miles over that way, they will fly back and they will do a dance on the frame.
Yeah, they do this. I don't know that. Yeah. They do it with their antennas. And they point everywhere they need to go.
In that direction over there, there's some beautiful forage.
So bees' bottoms are not the same colour as the wings because their wings are stripy and the bottoms are only black. Yep, that's true.
And with those pollinated crops, our food, we have built towns and cities, and the bees lived with us, visiting our window-pane flowers and terraces. Then the cities became darker and darker, and then we started using the countryside up.
With human democracy, you have lots of different factions that have different vested interests which compete with each other. Whereas with bees, they all have the same goal, which is to promote the colony and to spread the colony's genetics.
Bees are absolutely fascinating, the way they're structured, the way they communicate.
They are very, very organised, like we are, and as they go through their age in these boxes, when they're young house bees, they will have different jobs for a few days at a time.
To make honey, the bees, the foraging bees go out and they'll find flowers and they'll collect the nectar, and they'll fill their honey crop, their honey stomach with the nectar, and they'll bring that back to the hive and they regurgitate that to other workers in the nest. They add enzymes to it which invert the sugars, create a hot, humid environment in the hive. They wick the excess moisture out. When it gets down below 20% moisture, that's when it becomes honey.
I have honey every day as part of a regime.
It tastes really yummy and sweet, and the texture is really sweet and yellow.
I like honey, yeah. I mean, that's not my main motivation to keep bees, but it's a natural product. I wouldn't say it's good for you because at the end of the day it's got sucrose and fructose in it, which if you have too much of it, it's just like having too much sugar or too much of anything.
It's very sticky.
The different flavours of honey come from the different nectar sources, the different flowers.
So it's quite interesting to taste honey even from our own hives, which is different, let alone tasting it from other people's hives.
Beekeeping is good for the environment. We're quite good at destroying the environment.
They're quite sensitive to things. They're sensitive to loud noises. They get stressed if they get too hot. You move in a hive, you can hear them buzzing inside, making a real drumming sort of noise inside.
A honeybee's reaction to stress is to sting you.
They'll sting you back, and that also kills the bee. Once a bee stings you, then they get sick.
When you brush the bee off the barb pulls out its venom sac and some of its intestines, and as a consequence it then dies of dehydration. Urban environments are, weirdly enough, good for bees.
Pollinators in the city tend to be healthier than pollinators in rural areas. There's been quite a bit of research recently which has shown that bees in particular are healthier in the cities. They have fewer parasites.
In the parks of London, the gardens of East London certainly.
I think it's a sort of a really important missing link in our understanding of nature. So when we walk into the countryside, you see plants and trees and you see animals. When you start beekeeping, you honestly start looking at the countryside almost through the antennae of an insect. I now see our countryside is seriously under threat and is highly degraded by intensive agriculture, which has taken away the habitat for bees and as a consequence has taken away the habitat for many, many insects and therefore all the things that live off them.
We thought that we could survive without nature. We forgot that we are a part of nature too.
And we have to change that.
We need to learn to bring nature back into our world. And we've started to. Urban bee farmers are finding ways to let bees, pollen, nectar and nature back into our busy cities. But there's a lot of work left to do.
You can plant better bee-friendly plants in your garden.
Try using fewer pesticides in your gardens. If you must use pesticides, only use them as a last resort. Avoid spraying the flowers directly.
If everybody's garden's got a beehive in, wouldn't that be a great thing?
You can encourage farmers to leave the margins of their fields.
Plant more trees, full flowering trees. Trees are really good for bees, they have more flowers.
Bees need man to keep them alive.
You can encourage people to keep bees and support your local beekeeper by buying his or her honey.
Try not to mow your grass so frequently, let those daisies and dandelions grow because they're all really good forager bees.
You know, for me, I think every street should have a beekeeper and everybody should be eating the honey that comes from that beekeeper.
Hopefully together we can keep the world buzzing, bright and black and yellow.
They can't hurt you. They don't have like giant fists. We can hurt them, but they can't hurt us. So don't be mean to bees.